Yeah.
There we go. We are, well, about 20 seconds ahead of YouTube, but we're live. We will be live. So yeah, as I said, you will see what is going out to the live stream in Zoom. So you don't necessarily have to watch the, because you're right, 20 seconds off. You know, there is that delay. But let me move you guys over here. And
that's it. The delay always catches us out, doesn't it, Mike? Because we end up talking over each other sometimes, and yeah, things go wrong.
Yes, things go wrong.
So we try to give each other a little bit more space than we normally would in a conversation, because else we'll just talk over each other.
I think that's easy to do if you're watching the live stream on YouTube. If you're watching it here, it should be a little easier, but I'll just manually mute you, Darren. I'll just hit mute.
Oh, cool. Time. Actually, yeah, that works.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So do you want me to go through the runner show again for you, Darren? Or, oh, I know, Andrew, the essential app pick. Let's go with your second choice, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
That
MPV.
Sound okay to you?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that, there we go. Yeah, let's go with your second choice. Not that there's anything wrong with Pixelmator Pro. It's an awesome app, and I think we're all really interested to see where it goes now that Apple has its mitts on it. I mean, now that Apple owns it. But
we'll find out, I guess.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I still prefer Affinity Photo and Designer and Publisher as separate apps. But Pixelmator Pro is great and has a lot of wonderful. Well, they don't call it AI, do they? What does Pixelmator Pro call it? Their AI enhanced tools are pretty darn good, especially background removal and things like that.
I think they use Apple's language on that. They use like ML or whatever. They prefer to refer to it as machine learning based instead of saying AI based.
Yeah.
You're right. They just refer to it as machine learning enhanced tools. But
yeah, one of the main features. I started off with Affinity, like you say, Mike, but then I realized that Pixelmator Pro had a different UI. I didn't used to like the original Pixelmator, but when I looked at the Pro version, I thought, oh, this UI, it's really pro. It's very good. So yeah, I particularly liked the AI upscaler or ML upscaler.
Yeah.
In Pixelmator Pro, I love it.
It's quite good. It
like
gets
Paint.net.
A little weird, but
I was going to say, to me, it's kind of like Paint.net, which is a old Windows app for kind of like not quite Photoshop, but like a step up from Paint, and has layers and other features. It's like a good go-to tool, if you just need to do something quickly.
Yeah,
for sure.
So yeah, I've got both now. So I actually prefer Pixelmator, but I use both.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest, I really enjoyed the non-pro Pixelmator because it had some really great shortcut. Well, not shortcut, automator integrations. And I took advantage of those automator integrations a lot, very heavily. A lot of the automator workflows that I created used Pixelmator, not Pixelmator Pro, but Pixelmator integrations. And when they stopped developing Pixelmator and put all their resources into Pixelmator Pro, a lot of my workflows broke. And it's primarily because Pixelmator Pro didn't offer that same integration, or at least it didn't work the same, and I couldn't replicate it, and that was kind of annoying to me. So I still have a copy of Pixelmator. As long as it'll continue to run, I have a copy of Pixelmator on all of my Macs so that I can continue to take advantage of these workflows. But I know the life on those is limited. So that, by the way, Andrew, is Princess. That is Princess.
Yeah, I've not grown a tail or anything. That's the cat deciding to come and have a say hi.
I figured there weren't too many possibilities of what that could be. So
squirrel.
Yeah.
got, let's see here. We got Brian joining us again in the chat room. Good to see you, Brian. I actually, I actually did something I don't oh, go away, Brian. Brian. There we go. Okay. I actually did something I don't normally do, just because I don't normally do it. I'm not in the habit of doing it, and that's promoting the fact that we were going to have you on today, Andrew.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, which is
I really
fun.
appreciate it.
I did see you on Blue Sky. I haven't added you yet. I'm not fully into Blue Sky yet. I'm primarily on Mastodon, but I try to cross-post to Blue Sky when I can. I was talking about that on someone else's show. My frustration with it is the character limitation and needing to, which
add another post to it.
Which is the proper way to do it, is to create or craft a new post targeted for that platform. And so my quick and dirty cross-posting doesn't really work so well because it always gets cut off at, what is it, 150 characters on Blue Sky? Something like that?
It's 300 now,
is
or
it 300
it's a little
now?
Longer.
Well, I have 500 exactly. On Mastodon,
wow.
So...
if you go over 300, it's too much.
It's too much. Well, there you go. So, this may be a record, Darren, but how do you guys feel about getting started?
Well, why not? Yeah, only 6 minutes in.
Yeah, only 6 minutes in. We didn't gab for a half an hour ahead of time, but I'm also very cognizant and want to be respectful of Andrew's time. So,
no, it's fine.
Yeah. Of course.
But all right. Well, then we shall get started. I'm going to switch over in. And the title of the episode is just a little having fun with our email conversation, Andrew. So keep that in mind. I always surprise Darren with the titles. You never know what the title is going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm surprising you with the title.
It's always a surprise.
Always a surprise. All right. Why am I off center? Hang on one second here. Why am I? Yep.
It's usually me that's off center.
I know.
It makes a change.
All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. It's For Mac Guys Only, episode number 456 for August 9th, 2025. Ooey GUI Fun. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to take a little look back at a bit of Apple history this week are Darren Davies. Howdy, Darren. How are you doing?
Howdy there. Luckily, I managed to get to my audio controls because my cat has hijacked my mouse.
Normally, the cats jump on the keyboard and they press F5, which turns on the audio narration on your Mac. But I don't know. My cats have always figured out how to do that, which is why they're not in the room.
I have to hide the keyboard every time. Yeah, sorry. Carry on.
And I would like to welcome our special guest, the creator of the site mentioned in Fun News last episode, LisaGUI.com, Andrew Yaros. Hi, Andrew. It's great to meet you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Well, remember, we do normally record For Mac Guys Only live on YouTube the second and fourth Saturday of the month. And if you would like to come hang out, ask questions, and be part of our live studio audience, be sure to subscribe to the show at youtube.com/FMEOTV. And if you are joining us live on YouTube, I'll be keeping an eye on that chat room right over there. So if you have any questions or comments, be sure to drop them right in there, and we're going to address them here on the show. Well, folks may remember last episode's Fun News, where I talked about a pretty cool website called LisaGUI.com, which is a site that gives those of us who didn't have a chance to actually put our hands on a Lisa, no matter how close we actually got to one, but it gives us a chance to get a feel for how the Lisa operated. But as we pointed out, it's not an emulator, and there is no Lisa source code involved. Instead, the site is, as I described it, a loving recreation of the Lisa experience, right? And for Mac users, to have that experience is a pretty special one because the Lisa played an incredibly important role in the development of Apple as a company, as well as in the future direction of their other computing platforms. And while LisaGUI is still considered alpha, that it's based on historical information about the system makes it a thrill to use, in a browser no less. So imagine my own thrill when I received an incredibly generous email from the creator of the site and our special guest this week, Andrew Yaros, who wrote, "Thanks for mentioning LisaGUI on For Mac Guys Only. Every so often I check around the web to see if it's mentioned anywhere new. I know there isn't a whole lot to do on LisaGUI right now, but there is one major omission you guys didn't discuss that I wanted to bring to your attention." I'm going to skip ahead for a second here. He ended with, "Anyway, thanks for mentioning my project. The positive feedback I've gotten from people, including both you and Darren, has been especially wonderful and is what encourages me to keep going." Okay, there is an important bit I left out there, the major omission that we didn't discuss, and we're going to get to that in just a bit. But after trading a few emails with Darren, after trading a few emails with Andrew, it seemed only fitting that we have him on the show to discuss both LisaGUI and how he created it. So welcome again to For Mac Guys Only, Andrew.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here.
We can go in any number of directions at this point, and I know we were going back and forth on the directions we should maybe take this episode, but I guess the obvious place to start is, how did you get the idea for the site? Had you used the Lisa in the past, or did you know someone who owned one?
Well, I have a Lisa. I have a Lisa 210.
Wow,
So
awesome.
that has been certainly a help in, designing the site and, having that original reference that I can go back to. But the actual site itself was inspired more by things like mildmac.net, where there are a lot of sites that mimic the UI of the Mac. And there are also web desktop sites. So sites like Windows 93, I guess, is probably the most well-known one. These sites have varying degrees of functionality, but they're usually very loving recreations of desktop environments, but within your browser, and they're fun. And originally, LisaGUI was is going to be one of those sites. It was going to be a downloads page for my site, but it sort of grew out of that original purpose from just being like a downloads page with some links to actually becoming a functional web operating system or web OS.
That's pretty cool.
That's really the genesis of it.
So once you had the idea for LisaGUI, how did you go about developing it? I mean, you started with a website that was intended to be just a series of links, and there are plenty of other sites out there like that. But once you had the idea to take it that step further, what tools did you use in its creation?
Well, my main editor is just, WebStorm. That's a JavaScript IDE. I like it quite a bit. I know a lot of people are big fans of JetBrains products. That's a company that does a bunch of different IDEs, but I find it very handy. One thing I didn't do is I didn't really do any vibe coding or AI code generation. I wanted the whole thing to be sort of hand coded. I wanted it to demonstrate, my own skill sets too. And I also didn't use any site builders because I like to do all the little formatting from scratch. So like for the supplemental pages, I just actually went through a couple of revisions of them, but I did them from scratch. And in developing LisaGUI, it was kind of an iterative process. You know, for the first, you know, bit of time, I was just working on a couple different prototypes. I was kind of figuring out the software design, how that was going to work. And then, you know, at one point I did switch from the Mac to the Lisa because I felt that would be, you know, a more unique experience to give people, and maybe something that many people haven't seen before. And I mean, I don't know how much you want me to get into the actual software design of LisaGUI, but it might be a little too much for the show. I don't know. I mean,
you know, it's up to you. I think I heard you mention elsewhere it was primarily JavaScript, and you mentioned the IDE that you used to do that.
Yeah, it's mainly object-oriented programming, which is what I use. It's JavaScript has that now, and I think it works pretty well. So
as in terms of getting the interface into the website, LisaGUI.com, are you embedding it from elsewhere? Is the actual interface being run elsewhere, or is it all being run directly on the site? I presume directly on the site.
Well, yeah, it's all entirely contained, self-contained within
Awesome.
I have it within a single script. There is a single HTML5 canvas element on the page. Everything you see is rendered to that canvas element. So there's no actual like text area elements or text boxes or hyperlinks or anything like that, or actual image files. So I actually had to write my own little, I hesitate to call it a graphics engine, but it actually does the per pixel calculations for each pixel on the screen. And it does blending modes. So like, you know, when you invert something or have something invert the things below it, that was a technique that they would use for various bits of the UI on, you know, the old Macs and the old on the Lisa. You know, when you want to invert a button when you click on it, and that turns it from white to black, and now it looks like it's selected. Or when you select text, and it really what it's doing is it's inverting over that text. So there were things like that I had to implement. I also had to implement the typesetting system from scratch because I'm doing it on a canvas. And when you try and do normal text rendering to a canvas, it does aliasing. Sorry, it does anti-aliasing.
Anti-aliasing, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't have that. You can't have that with the Lisa.
I wanted it to be pixel perfect.
Yeah.
And so I developed like little typesetting system that actually positions each character along a baseline, and it has kerning values for each character. And I, you know, it was kind of a bit of a painstaking process to sort of bootstrap that whole thing and get all the characters in there, but make sure that was actually working. But that was a lot of fun. It was also quite a challenge, I'd say.
So I think to say this was a loving recreation is pretty appropriate.
Yeah, I definitely put a lot of you know, blood, sweat, and tears into it.
That's awesome. And importantly, no AI, which I love. I love that you decided to primarily hand code and create this all from scratch, which the feel of the site, if folks haven't visited LisaGUI.com yet, please do, because the feel of the site, other than the actual interpretation of the Lisa interface, other than that, the rest of it feels very much like a site appropriate to, let's say, 1995, 1996, something like that, right down to the animated GIFs and other graphics that are on the page. So to hear how you're using modern 21st century techniques to emulate effectively a late 20th century website is pretty awesome.
I mean, I guess I would say that those other pages that sort of describe the project, that aren't directly the actual simulation, those were just meant to look a bit like there were a couple of brochures for the Lisa that Apple put out to market it. And there aren't a whole lot of marketing materials for the Lisa that have their own brand identity. I mean, there was a brand identity, but I wanted to kind of capture that bit, capture a little bit of those marketing materials. It's kind of loosely based on that. And I added the little Web 1.0 88 by 31 buttons there too. That was just kind of for fun, and I guess I miss those days. So I just wanted to add a little charm to the site. But
there was so much fun on websites back at in those days. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a website unless it was overloaded with animated GIFs.
Well, I tried to be conservative, except for the links page. I have a lot of them on the links page, but I tried to be real conservative about that. I didn't want to overdo it. And there's a lot of people. It's kind of come back in vogue, that style of website. You have places like NeoCities and other places where people are trying to recreate that sense of community of the old web, and the style of those web pages.
Everything old is new again, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
you could use the under construction. Do you remember that the lovely yellow triangle with the guy with the spade under construction?
When I had
very late 80s.
I actually had when I bought the domain, before I was ready to put it up on the domain, I just had a little landing page that said under construction on LisaGUI.com. Nice. So yes, I know about the under construction signs and all that fun stuff.
And I love that anyone who wants to promote your site, you have an embeddable badge as well, which again was a very common thing, designed for Internet Explorer, designed for Internet Explorer. That whole idea of embedding a badge for the type of browser it was the page was designed for kind of died with Internet Explorer. But you have one of those badges for anyone who might want to promote LisaGUI on their own site, which is great.
Yeah.
We did get a comment here from Brian. I'm going to add this to the broadcast here because thanks for creating it, Andrew. I've been enjoying trying out the LisaGUI, not having access to a Lisa to use itself. That brings up a question, Andrew.
Yes.
How did you get your hands on a Lisa?
Well, first, I do want to say, I don't want to totally ignore LisaM, first of all, because if you really are determined and, you want to try out that UI, and, I should also say this was a big help in developing LisaGUI, but I used LisaM a lot as a way of referencing the operating system and the graphics of that and the UI and the behavior of it. And LisaM is an actual Lisa emulator. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect. It's not the fastest emulator out there. Lisa emulation is very challenging. It was a very over-engineered system, but that is also something you can try if you want to really see what the Lisa was like. Not entirely bug-free, but I think you do need a ROM for the latest release. And you do have to compile it, but
that's pretty common. That's pretty common. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think I saw that when I was looking at the site earlier, because that is actually one of the questions I had for you in just a little bit. I think we pretty much just covered that, though. Yeah. The Lisa you have, though, as I said on the show last time, we had 2 Lisas in my high school. And us kids were not allowed to get anywhere near them. They were just too expensive of a computer to let the kids play on. So they were there for the teachers to use. Now here we are, I guess it'd be, 40 years later.
40.
And
wow,
you've got a Lisa right there to work on. Did you pick it up on eBay? Is it something you've had in the family?
Oh, I've had this for a very long time, but the short version is I ended up receiving it kind of unexpectedly from a friend of my mom's. And this was like 2010, I want to say,
Okay.
or something around that time. Um, but for a while, I didn't have it working because I didn't have a keyboard, so it wasn't fully functional, but I was able to tinker with it. I was really big into collecting, old Macs at that time and toying with old Macs. So it was sort of another part um, of that, I guess, collection of things. Um, but I mean, more recently, I've actually had the chance to refurbish it a bit more and buy a keyboard for it and other things, get it actually functional again.
Actually functional, and let's see that. Some of the models had a hard drive.
Yes.
And so, does yours have a hard drive in it, or are you sourcing 5.25-inch discs to boot that from?
Oh, no. It's a 210. So the 210 was the one with an internal widget drive, they called it.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned it was the 210. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I do have what they call an X profile, which is just a drive emulator that sits in there instead of an actual hard drive because they were very unreliable, to say the least. So if you have a widget drive, back up your data if you're still there 40 years from now, 40 years in and using it. But I also, for a while, I couldn't really find a keyboard. I have one of these little keyboard adapters that lets you plug in a Mac Plus keyboard into there. Eventually, I was actually able to find a regular keyboard for the Lisa. I had to pop out the little foam pads and replace them because they're capacitive pads in the keyboard. It's from an era when that was a little more common, but the foam degrades over time, and that causes the keyboards to lose functionality.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something?
No, they degrade just a little bit. That's all I was saying. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was a sort of a process of figuring out what needed to be cleaned and what wasn't working. And I'm really just grateful that it still works. There are, I think, a few things I need to recap on there, but I'm not the greatest at actually soldering and recapping things. I might have to find someone to help me with that eventually. But it's fun to install different operating systems on there because the Lisa didn't just run Lisa OS. It also ran, well, for most notably, it ran the Macintosh operating system. A Mac XL is just a rebranded Lisa, and it has Mac OS installed.
Yeah.
They actually had to write a full-blown emulator called MacWorks, and that emulates. Originally, it was a Macintosh 128K. Later on, they have MacWorks Plus, which emulates a Plus. And that's for a lot of people what the Lisa was just sort of like an oversized Mac with a hard drive, which was unique back then. The original Mac did not have a hard drive.
It did not. No.
But the Lisa also runs some other things. It runs Xenix, which is an old Microsoft command line operating system.
That is Microsoft's edition of SCO Unix.
Yeah.
Yeah, Santa Cruz Operation Unix. That was Microsoft's version of it. Yeah, I did a lot of installations of Xenix in my lifetime.
Yeah, well, you can do it on a Lisa too. And you can also run, I think there's a version of Unix you can run on there too that I've gotten working. There's also Gem. So
love Gem.
Yes.
You can actually run that on the Lisa. There's a thread on 68K MLA that has some files that you can download and boot from, and it's kind of a little tedious, but you have to very carefully copy them over. But you can actually get that booting, and there's like a basic word processing program and a paint program that you can play with. But That I think is really cool because it's like there aren't really, as far as compact Macs go and black and white Macs go, there aren't really that many operating systems they run. It's either Mac OS or the Lisa OS. But Gem is like something else entirely. I just think that's really almost surreal to see running on a Lisa. But people got that working again after a long time.
Amazing. Now you have to add that into LisaGUI.
Well, actually, here's another fun little fact. One of the little features I added to LisaGUI was icon themes, which themes a couple of the system icons. And I added a gem theme to there. So, yeah, I'm a little, I guess I'm one step ahead of you on that one.
Gem was a great operating environment. We have to be careful in how we phrase that. Windows at the time was an operating environment that ran on top of DOS. Gem was an operating environment that ran on top of DOS or other operating systems. And Gem was great. I love Gem. In fact, I believe it was the PageMaker that shipped with Gem so that you could run it on a DOS PC. This was kind of before Windows became a real thing.
Yeah.
I think it was PageMaker that shipped with it. It was one of the.
And it was also native on. It was also native on Atari ST.
The Atari.
The Atari. Yeah. The great ST back in the day.
Yeah, Gem was the operating environment on the ST.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was
I also have an Atari icon theme too, because that's a little Atari TOS icon theme. It's a minor little feature. It's like an Easter egg almost, but
nice.
There aren't enough Easter eggs in software these days, Andrew. So I'm super glad that you're sticking those in there.
Like little references here and there, things like that. A lot of my time though has been just spent trying to get this functional. So I haven't added as much whimsy to the project as I've wanted to add. There are some Easter eggs that I plan to put in there. I actually plan to put Mr. Macintosh in there. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so you know about Mr. Macintosh, but
yeah.
I'd like to do that once every 1,000 or 2,000 times you open a menu and have a little guy pop out. I think that would be funny.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you've heard it here first, folks. Andrew is going to build Mr. Macintosh into LisaGUI.com. Heard it here.
I have to make a good bitmap of something. I don't know if it's going to be exactly like the one that they drew, but back then. But I'll figure it out.
Well, I love the time and effort you put into not only the website itself, but also into things like refurbishing that Lisa 210 that you have. In fact, I was having some flashbacks as you were talking about fixing the keyboard on there. Darren knows this, my personal computer platform of choice back in the early 80s was the Sinclair Spectrum. Now, I had the American version. I had the Timex Sinclair 2068. But one of the things that Sir Clive invented that was kind of unique to the Spectrum was something called the microdrive, which was a streaming tape loop. 16K, right, Darren? I think they held 16K on those.
Yeah.
Or 100, no, 100K.
More than that.
100K, yeah. They held 100K on the streaming tape loop. Well, as you were talking about the foam that degrades in the keyboards, I had this little flashback to the microdrive cartridges because the little piece of felt that sits behind the tape as you insert it into the drive and applies pressure to the tape so the head can read it. And this is a microdrive right here. That's a microdrive.
Right.
Except that's been modified to work with SD cards. But the little piece of felt would flake off. It would fall off. And so to repair these old cartridges, you have to get a little X-Acto knife and scrape off all the old glue, get a new piece of felt, cut it to the exact right size, otherwise it won't work, and glue it in there, and then hope you didn't get glue on the tape and all the other stuff. So there's so much that people do to keep these old computers alive, and I love hearing you describe the effort you're putting into keeping your old Apple computers alive. That's just awesome, and you need to be commended for that.
I mean, it's becoming, I think, more work for everyone now to keep these things running because things just degrade over time.
Yeah.
And I think
absolutely. Yeah.
Eventually all these old computers it'll be like a ship of Theseus thing where, eventually everything will be replaced with something else, I think. Nothing lasts forever, or at least we're not at the point where we're making technology that lasts 50 to 100 years yet. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. But I think we're going in the opposite direction, is developing technology that's meant to not last so long. But in any event, recapping, going back to recapping, that shouldn't be too bad on those older system boards. Yeah. They didn't use those little itty bitty teeny tiny parts that we see on the boards now. And I think I could actually handle soldering a new capacitor into one of those old boards. I don't think I'd touch a modern one though.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of fun stuff to talk about here, though, and that's corrections and clarifications, Andrew.
Yes.
In other words, what Mike got wrong, or maybe we should say what Mike missed, because there's a rather big thing I missed, and I don't think it was. I mean, I think it registered that I was interacting with it, but it didn't register what I was interacting with, if that makes sense. And that would be LisaType. Why don't you tell us about that? Because it is a huge feature and something that people need to kind of be aware of that exists in LisaGUI.
And I think that actually speaks a bit to the LisaGUI and how that works. But maybe I should just start by saying that LisaType is just a word processor. It's a word processing program for the Lisa. It's as fully featured as I could make it. So it has fonts. You can change the font. You can, add type styles like you would see on, MacWrite and LisaWrite, bold, italic, outline, text. It's as fully featured as I could get it. And I guess I would say that the fact that you didn't notice it is because of the document-centric feature of the Lisa. So you probably just clicked that icon, tore off a sheet of paper from the stationary pad on the Lisa, and you probably just saw it, and you were like, oh, I can type in here. Not thinking about the fact that it was an app, because the apps are more implicit on the Lisa.
Right.
They're in the background, and the documents are what take the front row, But I guess also LisaType to me is what takes something like LisaGUI from just a tech demo that's fun to toy with to something that's actually useful and something worth using. I actually held off posting it in a couple of places because I wanted to get that finished before it got too much attention.
And let's not minimize how you developed this site to create something like LisaType and give it as much functionality as you gave it, including, and I'm going to put air quotes around this, simple things like bold and italic and underline and things like that. For you to develop all this the way that you did, this isn't just an app you wrote to run on a Lisa emulator. This is this is all pure JavaScript code that you wrote to create this in this Canvas environment that you built.
Yeah,
from scratch.
I had to think about how I actually looked at all the old quick draw text styles, and I was like, what separates the bold character from a regular character? And it's actually just you I do an overlay. So like I do I think just once where I extend it out a bit. I sort of stamp the character again, like 1 pixel to the left, so that it's a bit wider and it looks a bit bolder. But because the Lisa has rectangular pixels, it stretches it out a bit. The characters are actually designed for this. So it's interesting. It's like there's this interplay of hardware and software where characters are the vertical part of each glyph is actually a little bit wider. And then the horizontal parts of each glyph are a little bit thinner, because then they get stretched out vertically while the vertical glyphs are remaining the same. So,
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
and the characters are, if you look at the system font, you'll see the characters are actually designed like that to work with that. I think if they had, you look at the Macintosh, you look at like fonts like Chicago, you know, the old system font for the Mac, and it's a lot more even in the stroke width. But
yeah, was the font on the Lisa, was it fixed width or proportional?
Oh no, it was proportional. It was
proportional.
Okay. Yeah. It did come with a couple of fixed width fonts actually, but it was designed around that proportional type system. So yeah, that was the big feature of the Lisa.
Yeah.
And it's also why they made the pixels vertical too. So they could fit more characters per line.
And I like that you mentioned, just going back for a second, I like that you mentioned the document-centric nature of the Lisa. That's actually how I always describe the Mac to people. It is, in theory, how Windows operates as well. You don't need to do like we had to do in DOS or other operating systems where you open the app or the program, where you open the program first and then open the file. Instead, you could simply double-click a file, and the appropriate application would open to display and allow you to edit that file. And that's kind of how the Mac has always been too, but there seems to be an important distinction between how the Lisa handled things and how eventually Apple had the Mac handle things. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah, basically on the Lisa, well, I think the main difference is when you create a new file. The Lisa doesn't let you go into an application and say, file, new, and make a new blank document. It doesn't work like that. Instead, you have to tear off what they call a piece. Okay, so document. Okay, how do I put this? The Lisa sticks more closely to the Mac, to the desktop metaphor. So there are little template files called stationary pads, and you tear off a piece of paper off of a stationary pad, and that's how you make a new document. You don't do it from the application, you just do it like you would do in an office. And you can actually, there's still a feature today where you can click a checkbox in the Get Info window, and you can make a file like that.
I was just going to bring that up. I don't mean to interrupt you, Andrew. I want you to finish this thought, but I was just going to bring that up because we had this discussion about stationary pad. I talked about stationary pad, the checkbox, to a user group where I was talking about little tips and tricks for creating templates on the Mac. I referred to them as a template. And the question came up, how did Apple decide to call it stationary pad? And I think you just answered the question. Yeah. It goes back to pre-Mac days. It goes back to the Lisa, and that's where the terminology stationary pad came up. And why it's not called create a template, it's called stationary pad. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's something I didn't even realize myself until, very recently. I was actually quite surprised.
Me too.
That it was called stationary pad. I never even noticed it in the Get Info box until a few weeks ago.
I completely looked over it myself until someone else told me about it. And then it became a regular tip in my rotation. It's like, you got to know about this checkbox because what you can do with it is so incredibly cool. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm sorry. So please continue.
I mean, yeah. I guess that was the main, I guess, omission that you made. But the other thing I wanted to sort of say was that I'm trying to sort of strike a balance between historical accuracy and ease of use for the modern computer user. So, LisaGUI is a bit more Mac-like than the Lisa was. And I've added features like the bulging trash can and even like sticky menus, even sticky menus, when you click on a menu and it doesn't go away, it stays open. That wasn't added to the Macintosh until later. It was never part of the Lisa. And so I don't want to give the false impression that this is exactly how the Lisa was. This is exactly what the Lisa was like.
Right. Right. And that was a mistake that I made. I made the assumption that because LisaGUI had the bulging trash can, that was a feature of the Lisa. And you corrected me on that. And that it was something that you, how did you phrase it? I think you said you backported it. You backported it from the Macintosh.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I've thought about it, kind of. I'm not really backporting anything, but
yeah. You were right. But that was, I think you said backported in air quotes. Yeah. which is fantastic, but I didn't realize it because not having had that hands-on experience with the Lisa for any notable amount of time, but I made an assumption and the assumption was wrong. You also mentioned that the the bounce demo in it was something that you adapted from Andy Hertzfeld.
Yep. So his little Macintosh desktop demo. So that was something where you sort of open it up and there's a few little files on the desktop and you double click on them and it gives you a little window with some little bouncing objects. And each icon in the demo, when you'd open it, would have different objects within the window. So there's a story from Andy Hertzfeld on folklore.org, which is a great site.
Fantastic site.
He describes how he added Pepsi caps as one of the objects, so that when John Scully was touring Apple, he would see that and be amused by that. Yeah, because as viewers may or may not know, John Scully was CEO of Apple for a time, and before that, he was CEO of Pepsi. So that's where that story comes from.
Yeah.
Folklore was also a huge inspiration for me and the development of the Mac. That was a big, big inspiration.
I think a good book, if folks are interested in Apple's history, would be John Scully's book Odyssey, which was about his becoming CEO of Apple. A really fascinating read. Whether you like John Scully or didn't like John Scully, I definitely recommend reading that book if you haven't.
That sounds like a good one. I'll have to look at that one.
Yeah. It's an older book now. It might be harder to find, but it was a good one.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, I think at one point also you mentioned, and you kind of mentioned this a moment ago too, that what you envision LisaGUI to be is kind of a what-if version, where what if the Lisa had continued on? What if the Lisa OS had become the OS of what later became the Macintosh? So I think that's a fun idea that you had to integrate some of the Mac's features into LisaGUI to give it that continuity between the two operating systems.
Yeah, that was part of the goal. And like I thought it would be cool to see, what would the Lisa look like with wallpaper, with well, not really wallpaper, desktop patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was something I had a lot of fun with. And also, I think those patterns in particular are really a historical set of artifacts, sort of all on their own. Those 1-bit patterns from that era, because it was this kind of stopgap solution for shading things on monochrome machines. How do you solve that problem?
Yeah.
And I've tried to collect as many as I can to display them together. I think they're an important part of history, of computing history.
They're such an incredibly important part of the Mac's history anyway. And it was actually part of another story that we talked about in that same episode where we talked about LisaGUI. There was a website that covered the evolution of the system settings, system preferences, control panel, however you want to refer to it. And it made reference to a very, very early version of it where you could literally draw your own desktop pattern. And that type of thing, or just the desktop patterns in general, being gone is, you don't miss it until you realize you miss it. And I realized I miss it because it really was a neat way to personalize the Mac. And by just scribbling around on your screen with the mouse just a little bit, you created this wholly unique version of the desktop pattern that was all your own. And right. I love that. And it's kind of too bad it's not still there.
Yeah, I think it's a fun feature, and you can play around and experiment and see which patterns tile well and which ones don't work quite well.
Now, I do want to talk about how you are continuing to evolve LisaGUI. I have one more kind of fun correction or clarification at the end here. It was a little bit of contention. A little bit of contention we had. We did some back and forth on the pronunciation of GUI. Now, I will say I made a very concerted and admittedly difficult, you might even say painful effort to pronounce it the way that you prefer it. And I see Darren laughing there because I should say this is the official way the name of the site is pronounced. It's LisaGUI. But, I grew up in the era of GUI and SQL and Ping and AT and others. But I will say that I was very relieved to read that you pronounce GIF properly.
Yes.
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 Oh, dear.
I'll die on that hill.
Yeah.
Well, I think on that we can agree. When the original developer of it says this is the way you pronounce it, you have to accept that. You have to say, okay, the original developer of GIF said it's pronounced GIF, like Jiffy.
And I don't even remember when I first heard the word GIF. So I don't know if it was because I heard someone pronounce it that way for the first time, maybe who was more in the know than that, or maybe it was that sort of kind of 50-50 chance where you kind of look at it and see one or the other.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, but I think it's one of those things that once you see it one way, it's like it locks in.
It absolutely locks in.
Absolutely,
and gosh darn
right.
it, that, as you said, that's a hill I'm gonna die on that hill.
Yeah.
But we have to turn this over to Darren for a second. Darren, is it GUI or GUI?
Well, there we go. I've always said GUI because when you start to call out the letters in an acronym, then you've lost.
Yeah. Well, talk about hills to die on is the whole at versus ATST argument, or ATAT, I should say.
Yeah.
Look, it's at. I'm sorry. There's no other. I mean, even Disney themselves, and I don't know how far back this goes, but Disney themselves sells a T-shirt that says "Where you at?" Come on, That should be the final arbiter of no. Don't send letters. Don't send letters.
Send all your letters to Mike at
as I
FMEO.
said to Andrew as we went back and forth, I said, look, here's the deal. You say GUI, I say GUI. The deal is I'm old, right? And the very early, and you might remember this, Darren, but the very early commercially available mouse-driven interfaces were often called or referred to as WIMP, W-I-M-P, which stood for Windows Icon Mouse Pointer. In fact,
mouse pointer thing,
yeah, they often referred to GEM as a WIMP interface. Windows
WIMP
not
interface,
so much, and Mac not so much. But we might be talking about UIs or user interfaces, but the GUI was a GUI. It's just it's
indeed a graphical one.
A graphical one,
no less.
And I think I even mentioned in my email to Andrew that I remember installing a WIMP interface on my Spectrum, or my Timex Sinclair 2068. It was a card that you plugged in the back, and you could plug your mouse into, and I think it was a Kempston mouse. You plug that into there, and then I had to write my own GUI for it. That was fun in 48K of memory. But as I said earlier, some of the other examples of fun pronunciations, you've got SQL for SQL and ping for PNG and ADAT for ADAT because there's no other way to pronounce it. But it does seem, and we're of a similar vintage, Darren, I think. A little bit different age, but a similar vintage. Does it seem to you as well that as time went on, that the fun pronunciations of acronyms kind of just disappeared? Like it was maybe around the late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. People started to actually pronounce the letters versus the...
Yeah, I suppose so. Like you were saying, Andrew, earlier, that some of the whimsy has disappeared. And it's kind of strange for me as well, because as you're saying, Mike, our vintages are fairly close. But we were around when this was happening. The weird thing for me is that I've never actually seen a Lisa in person, not even seen one, let alone tried to use its desktop or anything like that. So it's a lovely. It's like almost like what you would find in the computer museum, actually, to experience what the desktop was like back then, and how, as you were saying, with the things being document-centric back then being a big idea, which then later on turned into a Microsoft idea of having things be document-centric. But to me, that was, I'm not sure which came first. And it's weird that Andrew might know which came first, but we were the ones that were around at the time. It's really
exactly
weird. Yeah, so I don't know because I think I don't know if the Lisa morphed into what became Next OS, which then morphed into OS 10, or whether it was the other way around.
No, Next is what happened when Jobs was booted out of Apple by Scully. Talk about Scully. Scully's the one who booted Jobs out. And once he left, he went on to form Next.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, I see where you're going now. Yeah.
I did have the opportunity to play around with Next computers quite a lot. There was a computer store in the town where I went to college, and they did not like us coming in and playing with the Next, but we did. We went in there and we played with them. That was back in the days where you didn't necessarily own a super expensive computer. You went into the local copy shop and you rented time on it, so that you could do some scanning, or you could copy files to a floppy disk. The very early days of the small press magazine I published was almost all done on rented computer time at the local copy shop. But down the road was the shop that sold the Next computers. And so I would go in there from time to time and sit down and play with them. And They knew I couldn't afford a Next, but I went in there and
Well,
played
who
with
could?
them anyway. Yeah.
They were enormously expensive, weren't they, back in the day?
They
The
were.
next step machines.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they were.
I think I remember seeing an early video demo where the next step itself was very, very document centric. So when you saw the email programs, for instance, it didn't like behave in a similar way. It was almost like sharing bits of paper between people. It was really, really very strange in a almost completely document centric way. So it's good to see the evolution
Yeah.
of how this went from machine to machine.
Yeah.
Of course, I started off with Gem on the Atari ST, so that was my my introduction to the GUI.
We could go down a whole path, and I'll
Oh,
question whether
absolutely,
you
yeah.
had various GUI interfaces on your Commodore or your Spectrum, because I did. They weren't Gem, but we'll save that conversation for another time, Darren.
Yes.
So we did touch on this a little bit, Andrew, but one of the reasons that we initially had so many email exchanges was because, primarily based on what I got wrong, you were a bit worried about spreading misinformation about the Lisa, or worse, giving a false impression that LisaGUI is exactly what the Lisa was like. And this is what we touched on earlier. You mentioned that people who want to experience the Lisa's UI with pretty near perfect accuracy, they should try an emulator such as Lisa M. So do you have a favorite Lisa emulator? And I guess that question changes a bit knowing that you have a Lisa, but do you have a favorite Lisa emulator? And I guess you kind of explained this, but how much of a bearing did that have, if you did use one, and now we know you did, on the outcome of LisaGUI?
Well, there aren't really like a million Lisa emulators out there, and I think Lisa emulation is a bit of a challenge because it's an over-engineered machine, very much so. I think a lot of the people who worked on the Lisa worked on mini computers and things like that. So there's a lot of boards in there. There's a lot to get right. So there's only like a couple I can think of that actually exist in terms of actual Lisa emulators. There's Lisa M, which is probably the most notable one. And there's also IDLE, which actually stands for Incomplete Draft of a Lisa Emulator. Now, I think there was also a core for the for MESS, which is the the multi.
Oh yeah.
I forget what the abbreviation for that is. Multi-emulator super system, I think, right?
Oh yes.
I think there was a Lisa core for that, but I don't know much about that, or I can't remember much about that right now. But Lisa M is just the one I've always used, or it's always been my go-to. So I guess that's my favorite, but I feel like it doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean that much to say that my favorite. There's like not really much choice, I guess.
Well, there aren't a ton of Spectrum emulators for the Mac either. So,
yeah.
ZXSP, Fuse. I think Fuse is what you like, isn't it, Darren?
Well, yeah, I've certainly used Fuse, but quite a few emulators actually. I've got about 6 Spectrum emulators.
Yeah.
It's difficult to pick the best one, but yeah, I like the first one you mentioned. I think ZXSP. Is that the one?
ZXSP.
Yeah.
So,
although
it's
I think
completely
that's
fair. Completely fair to say Lisa M is your favorite emulator, Andrew.
I mean, it's like there's not like a bunch of choices that are all very, very similar in capability and functionality, which is, I guess, normally where you pick a favorite from those things based on, maybe features of convenience or something. But it's not, I mean, like IDLE, I don't think is as fully featured as Lisa M at this point, but I haven't toyed around with it enough to know for sure. But
I'll have to look into that potential MESS core. I'd never heard that there was a core for the Lisa for that, although it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I don't remember if it was functional or how functional it was, so don't quote me too much on that.
I guess that does make a difference. Well, this is going out live. You're quoted, Andrew. You have officially said that there is a core for the Lisa. No, I'm kidding.
I thought there was at one point, but hey.
I absolutely would not be surprised. The stuff that people are doing with that platform is incredible. So if there were to be a core for it, that would be the place it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one more thing here. This last area is, speaking of emulators, one of Darren's favorite topics. But what do you think about the current state of emulation on the Mac? Do you do much with emulation or with virtualization yourself? And if you do you have a favorite emulator or virtualizer, not just for Lisa, but just in general? And if you do, what would it be?
Well, in terms of my favorite emulator, it would have to be Mini VMAC. And it's, probably I guess it's a well-known one at this point. It's been ported to a bunch of things now, a bunch of platforms. Mini VMAC is kind of special to my heart, near and dear to my heart. I first discovered it many years ago when I was sort of venturing into the vintage Apple rabbit hole. And it's sort of how I got into Mac emulation. And I think it's sort of one of the main factors that drove me into being interested in vintage Apple stuff and Apple history.
That's cool.
And being able to really easily get that working with almost no effort. You just find the right disk image and you legally obtain a ROM file that you have the right to have. Quote end quote. But that's very near and dear to my heart. And actually, I added a feature in LisaGUI where you can have a slight border around the screen, and that border is adjustable. You'll notice there's like a black border around the window. So that the reason for that inset is because that's what Mini VMAC would do when you would make it full screen. You'd see that it wouldn't cover the whole screen because it's only a multiple of the original Mac's resolution, and that doesn't cover your whole display. So you'd see this big black border around there. And so I was just nostalgic for just that part of the emulator, that's one little aspect of it. And so I wanted to put that in there. So that's actually a weird little, almost like a weird little reference to Mini VMAC in a way.
A little homage.
A little homage, to the experience of using it. But Mini VMAC, for those who don't know, it's a Macintosh Plus emulators, which is actually one of the longest produced Macs that was ever manufactured by Apple. I think they had it for 10 years or some really long period of time.
For a long time.
Macintosh Pluses. Yeah. Just imagine today someone selling a computer for 10 years. I mean, so it's one of the seminal Macintosh machines, and a lot of software. There's a lot of software that works on it that you can play with and have fun with and explore. So that would be my favorite emulator. There are others.
I actually kind of assumed that the border around LisaGUI might have been there to kind of simulate a CRT.
Yeah, a little. That's part of what I was thinking too, and the color tint of LisaGUI is obviously meant to do that. Although I also have it. You can change the color palette too. There's a lot of little options there. I was inspired by other old display types, and one looks like a Palm emulator. One of them looks like a plasma display. You can just play with play with the preferences there. You can see little cleverly named color palettes there that I threw in there for fun. So you can. It's interesting to see a 1-bit UI and you can change so much about the feel of it just from the color palette.
Absolutely.
And I did interrupt you there. You were about to go on to talk about some other emulators that you like.
Oh, no, it's fine. the real go-to ones for me was always Mini VMac for like Mac Plus stuff, so like early Macintosh software. And then you have Basilisk 2, which is another good old one.
Yes.
Yep.
Well known.
That's a 68K Mac emulator, so machines from the 80s and 90s. And you have Sheep Shaver that covers like the late 90s. It's a PowerPC emulator.
Pretty awesome one.
Yeah, Sheep Shaver is pretty awesome. Those are the three that I mainly use when I'm dealing with vintage Mac emulation. There is a QEMU, or I don't know if you have a single syllable pronunciation for that one or not.
No, you can't do that one.
Oh, you got me with that one. You got me with that one.
I was just asking, seriously, I was just asking because I don't know if there's how many of those there really are. But
does anybody say emu? No, I don't think so.
I don't say emu ever, but
yeah,
I think it's a little weird to me. But
when it comes to QEMU, my pronunciation is UTM. That's my pronunciation.
UTM is handy, I guess. But I always found it a little. I think it's a bit less optimized than Sheep Shaver. Especially in terms of like cursor responsiveness and other things. Sheep Shaver, I think it's been the Mac emulation capabilities of QEMU aren't as old as the ones in Sheep Shaver. I think there's just, I can't speak too much to what's under the hood, but Sheep Shaver has always been much more easier to use for me.
Yeah. And I think its history alone is where its top-notch emulation comes through.
Yeah. And, it also has that handy feature where you can open a shared folder with your host system.
Yes.
That makes it really, really easy to get files on there. Instead of having to like do that thing where you take like a disk image and load up a bunch of stuff, and then you have to like reboot with the disk image mounted to the system, and then you have to like drag the files off. I always hate doing that. Really hate doing that. So having that feature is a lifesaver.
Are there any other future iterations of LisaGUI, like maybe a Mac GUI website or something like that, that may be in the cards that you can talk about?
Well, not really, because more like I just want to continue on with LisaGUI because there are things I want to do with that still. I mean, I didn't just do this to make a text editor. The next app I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of do a what if Lisa Paint application. There was no Lisa Paint ever. Lisa Draw was the app for the Lisa, and it's a vector drawing program. But I want to do a sort of what if Mac Paint was on the Lisa. I want to do an app like that where you have rectangular pixels and you're painting things. So like a raster editor.
Yeah.
And I want to maybe put other apps and games on there too. I think it would be fun to get some more apps on there. A lot of my effort.
Will Doom run on LisaGUI?
Will it run Doom?
No, not yet. Gosh, I've thought about like what it would take to get that working with it, but
I can't even imagine.
You probably could. If I had all the time in the world, I could get that working. I'm sure eventually. But
you could. I suppose you could probably do a version of Oregon Trail or something like that.
I mean, I've been doing all this from scratch, so it does take time to get the layouts.
You're recreating the whole thing.
My system is not. The system that I am using to lay out UI elements is not perfect. And, I'm sort of dealing with my own technical debt, as they say. And so, it takes me time to lay everything out properly. And it is hard to get things to be responsive. And it wasn't quite as much of a problem on the Lisa as it is a problem for me because I have a responsive window that you can drag, change the resolution of.
Right.
And that's another tricky thing is that you can't quite perfectly adapt that UI to be responsive. You know, it's a design problem that they didn't have to worry about in 1983. And
no, you had fixed resolutions
a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty.
But
now
there
I
are
did
things I'd like to do with it.
Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, there are more things I want to do with LisaGUI in general. So you know, I'm not done it yet.
I did see something interesting on Blue Sky that you posted just within the last day or so about the calculator app, which I thought was a really interesting kind of quirk in what you said was the original calculator app on the Lisa, and what would happen when you clicked a certain way. Do you want to explain that to folks?
Yes, that's a really interesting thing where when you click between the buttons, it will actually give you a little dialog pop up that says you didn't actually click on a button. Like, I think they were doing user testing, and people were not quite precise with the mouse at the time because the GUI was still something new. And people might have been clicking almost on a button, or they might have been like a pixel or two off. And so they probably added that in there because people were probably like, oh, why isn't my mouse working? That's how I at least imagine this went. Maybe there's someone out there who has the full story of that dialogue. I think it must be one of those like stories that I know Bill Atkinson would often talk about the dolt story where he would say people were upset because the dialogue said do it instead of okay.
Yeah, right.
But people thought it said dolt, and they thought they thought the machine was calling them adult, like an insult.
Wow.
So I think it must be one of those stories where, you know, it all came out of how did users behave and how did they react. And it must have been more efficient at the time to put a dialogue there to actually say that they didn't click on a button than to just have them try again.
Right.
And you know, the responses I got to that was one person said something like, I've never thought of a situation where it would be bad to add user feedback until seeing this, or something funny like that. But
I certainly
maybe I'll keep it in.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, well, you have to keep it in. I certainly don't know with certainty, but as you described your reasoning for why that dialogue probably exists, I think you're almost certainly right. The graphical user interfaces were so incredibly new. Very few people had any experience with them at all. What we did have experience with were character-based interfaces, and character-based interfaces are very, very precise. They had to be. They were by their nature very precise. So when you have an interface where you could be 1 or 2 pixels off and not have the interaction that you expect, I think having something like that, as your commenter said, just makes sense. And I'm surprised that that didn't carry over into other apps, or maybe you're still discovering if it carried over into other apps. But yeah, I can absolutely see people clicking and getting frustrated and not knowing why it isn't accepting their input.
Yeah. Lisa is known for its dialogues and messages that are very user-friendly. The Lisa error messages will tell you which part of the manual, which page of the manual to turn to.
Wow.
That's how like invested they were in making it user friendly. And I think people describe the Lisa as some kind of they describe it with more negative connotations, but there was a lot of work put into ease of use and guiding people to make the right, make the right choices, I guess.
Out of necessity.
Out of necessity, really. Because it was so new. So I wanted to sort of incorporate some of that language in LisaGUI. I wanted to ape the language that they were using a bit. Even with views, with views in the desktop manager or the Finder, on the Lisa, it's alphabetical or categorical. But I added some additional sorting methods for list view, and I tried to name them accordingly, but there's only so many words with that suffix that I could choose from. I don't think there's a good way of describing size ordered view as, alphabetical, numerical, categorical. There's words of that type. I think also some of the language that the Lisa uses is it indicates how new all this was and how there was so little convention in which language they were using and which words they were using to describe the UI. That is, I think, the biggest thing about the language on the Lisa.
Yeah, very, very little to no precedent for how to interact with this new thing. And that, as you said, the Lisa was itself, from a hardware standpoint, over-engineered, but then from a software standpoint, it had to be over-engineered as well. And it was clearly ahead of its time. I don't think the Lisa was a failure in any way, shape, or form, other than
economically. Right?
Economically, which it went on to give us the Macintosh. It went on to give us, by extension, Windows. It went on to give us GEM. It went on to give us all these other amazing graphical user interfaces that can, yes, you can talk about Xerox PARC, but I mean, this was the first real commercial that I can think of. It was the first real commercial implementation of something like this. And
there are distinctions you can make, like the Xerox Star was a workstation and the Lisa wasn't a workstation. I mean,
right.
It gets a little blurry, I think, around this time with who was really first. And
absolutely,
I just see it as an important milestone, a really important milestone.
And very important milestone. So you might look at it as a commercial failure, but it certainly was not a technological failure in any way, shape, or form.
Aside from being a bit slow.
And 5.25-inch floppy disks, but
Yeah. Oh well, those are the technological failures, really. The Twiggy drives and I guess you could say the widget drives are really the biggest failures or worst parts of it. But
so thank you again, Andrew, for coming on. This has just been amazing. I'm so grateful that you reached out and said hi and introduced yourself, and we could bring you on the show to talk more about LisaGUI. I'm sorry, LisaGUI. See what I did there? But as we wrap up, is there anything else that we didn't bring up today that you would like folks to know about LisaGUI and maybe the future direction you're taking it?
I think I covered quite a bit.
Yeah, we did.
I really just want to continue to polish it, there's a lot of things that I haven't quite done right, or haven't implemented yet on the technical side that I still want to get to. So I don't consider this project to be finished, but I am just happy that it's at a state where people can play with it and hopefully have a little fun with it. But I really want to get some more apps in there, like apps that you can create with, like Mac Paint, or maybe a couple more games that you can play. And give people a reason to actually stay within LisaGUI instead of just going, just wherever, some other part of the internet. So,
well, you are certainly doing an amazing job with it. Keep up the awesome work, because I am really excited to see where it goes. Especially, you mentioned, you teased the idea of maybe bringing a Mac Paint-like app over to LisaGUI.
that's my plan.
Let us know when that's there. And let us know when you want to come back on and talk about all the other amazing things you've done with it in the time after today.
Yeah, sure.
But thank you again for being on. And to our listeners, what did you think about this week's episode? If you have any feedback or you'd like to share a favorite story or two from your history with the Mac or even the Lisa, you can drop me a line, mike@formaccguysonly.com, or leave a comment in the show notes for this episode, and we will share your comments here on the show. Hey, Andrew, every week for about a year now, well, let me backtrack a little bit because you may not know this. We used to do what we called an Essential Apps episode every year, and we do it normally at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. And since the last Essential Apps episode, we decided it would be a lot of fun to introduce a new Essential app every episode thereafter. And that's what we've been doing now for over a year. We've been just introducing a new Essential app to people every week at the end of the show. And since you are our honored guest, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if Andrew had an Essential app he wanted to share with folks? So, do you have an Essential app, and what might that app be?
I actually do. The app I have is called MPV. It's a video player. It's GPU accelerated. I find that it's a lot better at handling really large files and really like 4K files than VLC is. And it's, not too complicated of a UI. It's pretty straightforward. And there are some Mac builds available, but it is cross-platform, I believe. And I just love it as like, if I want to, for people who keep a lot of files on their hard drive, like on an NAS, people who have media collections, maybe people who keep movies, I think it's a really useful app for that, for dealing with media collections. Just a good functional app that is capable of playing a real hefty file, and it handles HDR pretty well and other things like that. So, yeah.
And where would folks find that if they were interested in it? I know it's an open source app. I looked it up a little bit before. I had not used MPV myself. I know it's open source, which is awesome.
I think it's just mpv.io, I believe is the URL. And there are some Mac builds available. If you want to build it yourself, I guess you also technically can. But it's open source, so there you go.
If you're of the sort who likes to download source code and build it yourself, you can do it. Knock yourself out. But I did look, and there are a couple builds for the Mac. There seems to be an official build, and then kind of an unofficial build. And I couldn't quite tell what the difference was between the two. Do you have an idea why there might be the different builds there?
I imagine one might be more of a recent build than the other. It might just be one of them is more of a stable release. I have to double check some of this, but usually that's the reason they have more than one build.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. But mpv.io, and it sounds like you recommend this over something like VLC.
I don't want to say entirely, because VLC has its uses, but I just think it's a good alternative if VLC has trouble handling a file or trouble with something, because VLC isn't perfect. So it's good to have.
It certainly would not be the first time I've loaded a separate app to do the same type of thing on my Mac. I think there's probably several categories where I have 2 or 3 or even 4 apps that all do very similar things, but one just does it a little bit better than the other.
Yeah, I mean, no app is perfect, and I think it's good to have choice. User choice is important, and the more the merrier. I think it
Absolutely.
makes for a healthy ecosystem too, and makes for healthy competition, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And we're big fans of open source and the essential apps. We often share open source apps here because they are quite frequently some of the best apps out there that you can put on your Mac.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And Darren, did you pick up, as Andrew was talking about MPV, did you pick up the other acronym that he mentioned that we pronounce?
the NAS.
The NAS.
Oh, yeah.
Versus the
NAS.
NAS.
I know some people say NAS.
Yes.
Everyone says NAS.
I just look. I'm not a big guy who pronounces acronyms verbally. I always just say the letters. I don't know. It's just a force of habit. Okay.
No
I know
that.
some people will get on my case about that, but whatever.
I do like my
nothing wrong
NAS.
with that. Yeah. In fact, I'm shopping for a new NAS or NAS right now.
Whatever.
I need to get one. I need to stop paying Dropbox $120 a year. I need to get my own that I can just, tie into from anywhere in the world securely, get to my files, and I think it would more than pay for itself rather than paying Dropbox every year.
Yeah, it's a good investment.
Yeah. But MPV is Andrew's pick for Essential App this week at mpv.io. Thanks, Andrew. That was awesome.
No problem.
And with that said, that is going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. Remember, I do love to get your letters, so if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, be sure to leave your favorites in the comments of this week's show notes found at formaccguysonly.com, or drop me a line, mike@formaccguysonly.com. And do be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV and click that little notification bell so you can find out when we're going live. You can join the chat room and catch all the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. And it was good to see Brian in the chat room again today. In fact, Brian's last comment, let me pull it up here real quick, was actually a really nice comment on LisaGUI. Brian wrote, "I learned so much today. This has been great. I look forward to future additions to LisaGUI."
Oh, I really appreciate that. Every little bit of feedback I can get, or that's helpful, and warms my heart usually to hear people are getting enjoyment out of something that I made. So
absolutely,
means a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian, for joining us today. Andrew, what is the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
You can just visit my website, I guess, and I have an email link there. It's just yaros.ae or yaros.ae. Those are my first two initials, so you see it's a domain hack.
I love it. I love it. And of course, LisaGUI.com is another good way to get a hold of you.
Well, yeah, of course. And I encourage anyone to check it out. And, I also have I have a links page, and I've tried to do my part as a web citizen and link back to other projects and things that I find valuable or that inspired me. So you can always check that page out too. And there's plenty of things to look at there.
Very cool. Very cool. And we'll also be putting links to everything that we discussed today in this episode's show notes, including Lisa M, which I noticed there's a ton of links to historical sites about the Lisa and just Apple in general on their site.
Yeah.
Another great resource. Thank you, Andrew. And Darren, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Oh, no worries. If someone wants to send me an email, they can send me it at darren@formaccguysonly.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Darren and Andrew for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. All right. Cool. Yeah, that was great. We're still live for a second. I'm going to throw up an end card here, guys, and then I'll be right with you. I'm gonna end the live stream,
Cool.
and then I'll be right back with you. So here we go. Bye, everyone. Bye, live stream.
Cheers.
Bye, Brian. We'll see you soon.